Welcome to the Love and Meaning Podcast, where inner work is a lifestyle. Welcome to the Love and Meaning Podcast. I'm Cree, your host, and today we have another lesson in meaning. This lesson in meaning, I have a very strange contemplation for you, and it sparked for me at work because I am a mental health occupational therapist. I work in psychiatry. I've been an occupational therapist for 13 years now, and with an expertise in mental health for working in inpatient psychiatry for the past almost 9 years. And I encounter the extremes when it comes to mental unwellness, the extremes in terms of psychological distress. And in our society, we have this understanding that, it's crazy, air quotes, crazy to talk to yourself. And trust me, I understand this. I know where this comes from. But you know that saying that we have where it's like, you might say, oh, I talk to myself all the time. Just as a lay person might say, I talk to myself all the time, but we don't mean in terms of auditory hallucinations. And then someone else might jokingly respond, as long as you don't answer yourself. And then we laugh, ha, 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 we laugh. So I encounter that often enough. And the last time I heard it, it really got me thinking, is that true? As long as you don't answer yourself. And then a whole rabbit hole of contemplations came through. So I encounter the talking to yourself that we're referring to in this sentiment. And I have to say that in my experience, seeing patients experiencing auditory hallucinations, they actually seem to be experiencing extreme disconnection. Because though to us, looking at this person, you can say they're talking to themselves, that person's perception is not, in fact, that they're talking to themselves, at least the vast majority of time. They're actually speaking to someone else, many someone else's, or an entity external from themselves, from their perception. So they're actually in such a disconnected state that they're not even able to recognize their own self in themselves. So that's what first sparked me thinking about this idea of talking to ourselves. And then I've been engaging in a lot of internal family systems work of late. A lot. And it is my favorite tool right now for uncovering my motivations, my emotional motivations at all times. It is uncovering and dismantling limiting beliefs faster than anything else I've ever utilized, any other tool that I've ever utilized. And it has greatly increased my self-compassion. And as a result of my increased self-compassion, I've become a lot more courageous, a lot more forgiving of myself, and a lot more willing to walk in the world authentically as my authentic self. And as a secondary result of that, or tertiary result to that, I'm experiencing even more compassion for other people, because the same parts in myself that I'm recognizing when I'm, air quotes, talking to myself in internal family systems, I recognize parts in other people, right? We all have similar parts maybe ones don't play the same role in someone else's life or don't come out as often. But when I see somebody experiencing anger, like I know what it is to experience anger. And I'm not saying that I'm condoning their behavior or that I like experiencing anger coming towards me, but the compassion is there because I've built this relationship with all of these aspects of myself that I now can see the human in other humans. And I can also understand if there is a true self in me that is separate from these parts, then there's a true self in them, whether they're willing or able to lead themselves at that time. And so, in this experience of really diving into internal family systems with myself, it's obviously impacting my work, it's impacting my coaching, it's impacting the teachings that I'm bringing to my membership in the collective perspective. And it has been wildly expansive and extremely helpful to those, all of those in my community. But it's a little weird to talk about, right? Like there's that part of me that's like, oh my gosh, like this is a really strange thing to kind of just talk about on my social media or even on my podcast. And it's not like I'm expressing, breaking down the specific workings of IFS. That would be different and be like, well, I'm going to explain it all to you. That's not really the way that I'm engaging with it. I engage with it on a practical level and I deliver practical tools. This is the way that I'm engaging it. You don't need to be an IFS practitioner to be able to utilize this with yourself, and that's the way that I use this. And so essentially, though, I'm talking about talking to ourselves, and that's a weird thing to talk about in a society that automatically thinks talking to yourself is strange. And so it really got me thinking. It really got me thinking. We are pretty much in agreement that, it's weird to talk to yourself and as long as you don't answer. But I wonder, this is my question. Is it maybe weird to not talk to ourselves? If talking to ourselves in the way that, my patients experience talking to themselves is on one end of the spectrum, and that is pathological. Is it possible that the opposite end of the spectrum, not conversing with yourself at all, is just as pathological? And if you think about it, a very small percentage of our population experiences auditory hallucinations and severe mental illness, like I'm referring to. But how many people are walking around in regular life with no conscious internal correspondence? How many people are walking around in life actually having no idea who they are and potentially no interest in engaging with that? On both ends, I see disconnection, but one of them is completely normalized in our society. So my contemplation is it really unhealthy not to converse with ourselves? And truly, when we do talk to ourselves, maybe it's not a matter of as long as you don't answer yourself, but rather, what is the quality of that conversation? And can we learn to normalize a self inquiry in a way where we actually listen to our deepest internal workings, bringing that into the conscious, and then with our highest self in our conscious mind, make decisions with our best judgment with the most information possible about ourself. Maybe a better signification of health is somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, where not only do we talk to ourselves, but we answer and we listen and we learn about ourselves so that we can make conscious choices about the way that we want to show up in life. I have learned so much about myself in the past 3 months since I've been really diving deep into parts work. That has shocked me. I've learned so much about myself that has shocked me. There's so much about ourselves that we don't know because it's not on a conscious level, because it's trapped inside of us at the exact age and time and location that it happened. And there are many aspects of us depending on who's running the show. And whether this sounds weird to you or not, we all know what it feels like. We all know what it feels like to, for example, drive home from work and pull up in our driveway and then have that like awareness moment and be like, wait, how the heck did I get here? Like you don't actually recall the entire drive at all. Just pure automation happening. We all know what it feels like to be really tired, really, really tired, and just have somebody, you know, ask you to do one more thing in addition to what you had planned for the day. And you're just like, I can't. And it's a complete emotional breakdown. Next thing you're bawling and freaking out. We all know what it's like to be so pissed off about other things in your life. Like you're just angry that day. Like it's just a confluence of circumstances. And somebody buds you in the line or cuts you off in traffic and you just blow up, say things, and behave in a way that you are not proud of. Who is in the driver's seat? Who is running the show? When you think about it in that way, you know that there are separate parts of you. There are parts of you that are different than the true you. And when those parts are in charge, you act differently, you speak differently, you feel differently. But very often we just have these parts kind of come up, they pass, and we just go about our day, you know, swapping parts very unconsciously. And sometimes we can sit in question of why certain things and certain circumstances and certain relationships or certain dynamics in relationships have manifested in our life or continue to manifest in our life, or repeated patterns manifest in our lives. And we wonder, when I have such a different desire than what's showing up, how do I keep getting here? But this is not what I want. I want A and I keep getting B. But is the part of you that's running the show aligned with getting A, aligned with getting your desire? If you really want to be in a relationship, it's a huge desire of yours, and fear is always running the show. You don't go on the date. You don't say yes when the offer comes. You don't look people in the eye when you're walking down the street and allow even for opportunities of spontaneous interaction. You don't download the apps. So maybe a little bit of talking to ourselves is in order, because what has come through from these self conversations is pertinent information that I need to know so that I can help these parts of me think and feel differently. And oftentimes some of these parts dissolve. They become different parts because they realize that their role is no longer necessary. All it takes is a conversation and understanding. I have had so many interesting experiences in the last week. Two that, okay, I'll say one. So one that really stood out to me, that was really, really fascinating, was there was a day where I had a lethargy part of me active and a restless part of me active. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because those are like opposites, right? And I'm like, that's really, really weird. Interesting. And so I went within and I had a conversation with restlessness, and it told me, like, quickly, like within seconds, like there was no, it was just the most intuitive response. But it told me that it was here in direct response to my lethargy part. And I was like, wow. And it said that it was here because it was afraid that we wouldn't be successful today. if it wasn't here to activate me. And that blew my mind wide open. So much so that I created a very cool teaching inside of my membership, because what that taught me right in that moment through a very simple conversation with one of my parts is that our parts are working to secure our signatures. In human design, all of the types have a signature, and your signature is your mode to fulfillment. I am a projector. My signature is success. Success is what feels the most fulfilling to me. That is my mode. That is my sign of alignment. So, signature, sign, your sign of alignment for your type. Mine as a projector is success. And I did a reflection in that moment, and I realized how often that pattern shows up for me. That I will have a part, and it's often something like restlessness or anxiety or perfectionism or a controller part. These are commonly recurring parts for me that show up. And it was through series of conversations over time, I saw this pattern, like lethargy shows up, restlessness shows up. How interesting. And it's because my parts subconsciously, without me even knowing it, without us even knowing it, your being is working towards achieving your signature. But the thing is that when we are not in self-leadership, when the highest version of us is not running the show and our parts are running the show, they don't do it in the most adaptive way. It might be a maladaptive choice, like, for example, using restlessness. And so when I was like, with so much love, and I mean awe, I was like actually impressed. I was like, okay, I totally get that. And I'm like, do we need to use restlessness to ensure success? Like, is there another way that we can do that? And very easily my part was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And my part literally suggested to me, well, why don't you, when we're done here, go and sit at your agenda and pick out the main things that you want to get done today. Just the main ones, like a reasonable amount of ones. So then I don't feel like I need to keep pushing us to like find a thing to do, follow a thing to do. Like, let's set it out clearly, and then we just know that those are the three things that we're going to get done, and we can work with flexibility around the rest. And I was like, cool, done. And I did it. And I had a day of incredible flow. And not only did I have a day of incredible flow, this was Monday. It was actually one of my most productive days, because as a projector, when we're in alignment, we can move really, really quickly. We can do things in a very, very aligned way. And I was able to really balance that day between self-care and productivity, um, with extreme ease. And I know it had to do with that conversation. It had to do with that conversation with my parts. And so maybe we really need to start talking to ourselves, but talking to ourselves, as our aligned selves, as our highest consciousness selves, and asking questions and answering them, asking questions and listening for the response, and then responding again from our higher selves. This is a practice that can be learned, but I really do question, like, this contemplation is, and I think it's going to deepen further. It's really sent me into a, a space in my mind where I'm like, wow, it is so interesting how sure we are, you know, to say, oh, you're talking to yourself as long as you don't answer. Well, I think a lot of us need to start talking to ourselves, and I think a lot of us need to start answering. I was taking a course recently, and the mentor was mentioning conversations with her clients that she was having. And this was not IFS related at all, but I've been getting confirmations of everything that I'm thinking and the ideas that I have and the actions that I'm taking. Just the universe is sending synchronicities everywhere. So she wasn't speaking from an IFS perspective. She was just speaking from her experience as a very skilled mentor, a very skilled coach in the industry. And she said that, she'll have an idea or something that the clients, they've decided this is in business that they're going to be working on it. And the client would say like, oh, I asked myself, like, can you do that? And I was just like, I did. I sat and I asked myself, like, can you even do that? And she said, well, what did you say? And the client's like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, you asked yourself, like, can you even do that? And what did you say? She's like, I didn't say anything. I just stopped and I put it on the back burner. I moved on. Like it's scary. Like I'm not going there. Like what do you mean? What did I say? And she was like, well, you asked a question. Don't you think you should answer it? Wow. How often, how often do we do that? Because what would come from the answer? You would be confronted with the truth and you would have an opportunity to measure within yourself whether that truth, air quotes, is true or not. So the question of can you really do that? And if you say to yourself, no, no, I can't. And then you say to yourself, well, why? And then you might have to think a little bit and be like, well, I guess I can. I mean, I can do it. It's just, it feels terrifying. Okay, so you can do it. You're just terrified. Yeah, just terrified. Okay, well, what are you terrified about? Uh, well, do you see where I'm going with this? And then eventually we get to a place where at least on one end, you have a true awareness of yourself. We're not just using blind statements or just listening to endless limiting beliefs about ourselves that can be easily challenged to know that they're not true within yourself. Or two, we actually have a conversation with ourselves and get to a place where we realize like, oh no, that no, I'm actually gonna do something different. That's really, really interesting. That's not as complicated as I thought it would be. Or I can solve that problem really, really quickly. Or I actually have a solution to that. We give ourselves so many more options when we have these conversations with ourselves. When we have conversations with our highest self and everything genuinely that we're experiencing with full acceptance and understanding and compassion, just a real heart to heart with ourselves. Amazing things can happen. Amazing things can happen. And just simply as a start, we will automatically be walking around in the much less blind to how we're operating, what we're attracting to ourselves, to truly the choices that we want to make and the ways that we want to lead ourselves and how we want to show up in the world. I would love to know. I would love to know your contemplations on this. Feel free to share them. And if you want to dive deep into this on the other side, you can join my collective perspective membership. Where are you on this spectrum? Non-judgmentally ask yourself, where are you on this spectrum? And what would happen if you moved more to the center? Let me know what comes up. I love you, and I will see you in the next one.